wealthiest Americans. They claim to, of course, the separation of church and state was one of the primary, again, fundaments of Goldwater's belief. And yet modern conservatives are the biggest advocates of American theocracy in virtually all of their writings. His greatest love was for the United States Constitution, and where he was absolutely reverential towards the Bill of Rights, which is, again, another pillar of conservatism, throughout our history. And yet these people have done more to undermine the Bill of Rights than any government that has ever, existed in our country. Americans are now torturing people, where something that it was, steadfastly avoided throughout our history. Washington, said that I would rather not have a nation than have a nation that tortures people. And when he captured Trenton, New Jersey, he treated the prisoners so kindly because of his efforts that they walked without guards, the Hessian prisoners, all the way from New Jersey to Western Pennsylvania. They were so shocked about how he treated them. Abraham Lincoln, during the Civil War, wrote the rules of engagement, the rules of treating prisoners that later became the Geneva Convention. And Dwight Eisenhower said that this is one of our principal military strategies. We're going to treat prisoners, the German prisoners we capture, with dignity and respect, and we're not going to torture people. And that's one of the reasons they gave up so easily. And this has been part of our tradition. It's one of the conservative tradition of our country. They've gotten gotten rid of habeas corpus, which is 820 years old. They've gotten rid of many of the protections that we have against searches and illegal searches and seizures. All of these things, they've created an imperial presidency. With new powers, these signing statements would allow the president to overrule Congress. There were wiretapping people. And one of the things he talks about, my favorite passage in this book, and I actually grabbed a copy of the book to look at it because as I was sitting in this other room and I was thinking about what I was going to talk about, but he talks about the use of fear by government to govern, and and how bad that is. And he would have been absolutely contemptuous of the way that fear is being used. First of all, of the cowardice of our public officials, the biggest collection of draft dodgers that we've ever had in American history in the White House. And but also, just the use of fear as a governing tactic, which and we have to remind ourselves that they're constantly telling ourselves, well, we're in this great danger now. But even those of us who live in New York, who lost friends in the World Trade Center, as I did, I understand that we are actually in one of the safest times in American history. When Goldwater was around, when I was growing up, and we had 15,000 nuclear-tipped warheads pointing at us from the Soviet Union, each one capable of destroying an entire city, that was dangerous. But we didn't torture people. We didn't wiretap people. We didn't suspend habeas corpus during the Civil War, when we had 640,000 Americans die. 640,000, not 3,000. 600. It's the equivalent today of 6 million people die. We did not torture people, and we did not, suspend our Bill of Rights. And there's been many, and during the American Revolution, when we had the cities burned, when we were, barely surviving as a nation, Washington absolutely refused to run roughshod over, what he considered basic ethics, which were inframed in our Bill of Rights and basic human rights. So, this is they claim that they like law and order, but they're the first ones to let the corporate lawbreakers off the hook. They claim to like local control and states' rights, but they only like those things when it means sweeping away the federal obstacles to corporate profit-taking at the local level. And they claim to love Christianity, but they have violated every one of the manifold mandates of the Christian faith, that we care, for example, for the environment, that we act as stewards. The Christian Coalition, which they created, has as its primary mission for this year to make permanent President Bush's tax breaks for the rich. And that's not something that I think a kind of Christianity that Jesus Christ would recognize. So if it's not conservatism, what is it? It's corporate control. And that's something that from the beginning of our national history, our greatest political leaders have been warning American people against the domination by corporate power. And it's something that Goldwater talks about in his book. Corporations are economic entities. They should be kept out of government. But all of our great conservative and Republican leaders Teddy Roosevelt said this nation would never be destroyed by a foreign enemy, but he warned that our beloved political institutions, that our constitutional guarantees would be subverted by malefactors of great wealth who would steal them from within. Dwight Eisenhower, another Republican in his most famous speech ever, warned Americans against the domination by the military-industrial complex. Abraham Lincoln, the greatest Republican in our history, said during the height of the Civil War in 1863, I have the South in front of me and I have the bankers behind me. And for my country, I fear the bankers more. And Franklin Roosevelt said during World War II that the domination of government by corporate power is, quote, the essence of fascism. And Benito Mussolini, who had an insider's view of that process, said essentially the same thing. He complained that fascism should not be called fascism, it should be called corporatism, because it was the merger of state and corporate power. And what we have to understand in this country is that the domination of business by government is called communism, and the domination of government by business is called fascism. And what our obligation is to walk that narrow trail in between, which is free market capitalism and democracy, which is what Barry Goldwater embraced and defended, and hold big government at bay with our right hand and big business at bay with our left. And if we're going to do that, we need an informed public who can recognize all of the milestones of tyranny, which is what you need to read this book about. And we need an aggressive and independent press that's willing to stand up and speak truth to power, which we no longer have in the United States of America.
Jeff Madrick.
Thank you. Why do I get the tough act to follow?